What if the Holy Spirit was meant for so much more than just spiritual power? Today, we're jumping into a sermon from Bishop David Oyedepo that totally reframes this. It presents the Spirit not just as a force, but as a blueprint for a truly flourishing life. A life of real vitality, strength, and even physical well-being. Let's dive right in. So here's our game plan. We're going to start by challenging a common misconception. Then we'll unpack this really cool metaphor of the two reigns. After that, we'll get into what the spirit of might actually is, and finally, see how it all ties together into a life of divine enablement and, yes, even amazing physical health. All right, let's lay the groundwork. The big idea here is that for a lot of people, the view of the Holy Spirit is kind of small. The goal today is to challenge that limited perspective and uncover a much broader, more life-changing role that he's meant to play. So let me ask you right now, when you hear the words Holy Spirit, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? Just hold that thought for a second. I'm willing to bet that for a lot of you, the word that came to mind was power. And look, that's not wrong, but according to this teaching, it's an incomplete picture. The fuller, more holistic purpose is to bring about a flourishing life, a life that's overflowing with abundance, deep satisfaction, and genuine vitality. Okay, so you might be wondering, how does this flourishing life actually come about? Well, to explain it, the sermon points us to this amazing metaphor from the book of Joel, the idea of the two reigns. And hey, just so we're all on the same page, we're not talking about actual weather here. In the Bible, the former rain and the later rain are these powerful symbols for two huge, distinct phases of the Holy Spirit's work here on earth. This timeline really helps lay it all out, right? The former rain, that was the first massive outpouring of the Spirit right after Jesus ascended. Think about the day of Pentecost. The argument then is that we, right now, are living in the time of the later rain, a period the Bible calls the last days. And get this is the promised result, the payoff of these spiritual rains. And notice how practical and real-world it is. The promise isn't just about some fuzzy spiritual feeling, it's about tangible restoration, having enough, being truly satisfied, and living a life completely free from shame. It's the whole package. Now, to really grasp how this flourishing happens, we need to zoom in on a very specific aspect of the Spirit's work. It's a concept from the book of Isaiah that unpacks what this supernatural strength is all about. This is so cool. The teaching points out that what we often just call power is actually just one piece of a 7-part spectrum. You've got the Spirit of the Lord, of wisdom, of counsel. It's this whole toolkit. But for the next few moments, we're going to park on that one right in the middle, the Spirit of might. So what in the world is this Spirit of might? It's described as this supernatural strength and agility. And we're not just talking about physical power, like lifting heavy things. This is a deep inner vitality that literally pushes out weakness and frailty from your life. I mean, how incredible is that imagery? It paints this picture of what the Spirit of might produces. Believers who become like spiritual war horses, strong, fast, and absolutely tireless. It's a picture of unbelievable stamina, both spiritually and physically. And this all leads to a really direct question. Why would anyone walk around feeling weak, tired, or old before their time when this kind of supernatural strength is supposed to be part of our spiritual DNA? It's meant to be a wake-up call, for sure. Okay, if this supernatural strength is really available, what's the secret? What's the key to unlocking it? Well, the answer lies in the sermon's central theme, a concept it calls the Spirit of grace. This verse from the book of Hebrews is the jumping-off point for a pretty radical idea, that grace isn't just some abstract theological term. It's presented here as an active, personal function of the Holy Spirit himself. And here it is, the core redefinition. Most of us think of grace as simply forgiveness for our mistakes, but in this teaching, grace is way more active than that. It is divine enablement. Think of it less like a pardon and more like a spiritual power-up, allowing you to operate way beyond your natural capacity. So in your everyday life, this divine enablement is the force that pushes you past your natural limits, whether that's in your energy, your wisdom, or your strength. It's the very thing the Apostle Paul was talking about when he said, "It's not me, but the grace of God that's with me." Okay, let's bring this all home and connect the dots. We've talked about a flourishing life, fueled by supernatural might, all accessed through divine enablement. Now we see how this applies to one of the most practical parts of our lives, our physical health. The logic here is just so powerful, and it's pretty straightforward. If the very same spirit that brought Jesus' body back from the dead actually lives inside a believer, then of course that spirit can quicken or make alive and vibrant our ordinary mortal bodies. And this all builds up to a really bold, really game-changing claim. The sermon argues that living a sickness-free life isn't supposed to be some rare miracle for a lucky few. No, it's presented as a core part of God's agenda for everyone living in this era of the later rain. This verse is held up as the ultimate promise. Just picture that for a second. A reality where the very phrase, "I am sick," just isn't part of your vocabulary anymore. Not because you're in denial, but because the divine life of the Spirit is so active inside you that it deals with sickness at the root. And now we get to a final, really crucial distinction. There's nothing at all wrong with medicine or seeking medical care. The issue isn't the care itself, but where we put our ultimate trust. The argument is that if all your trust is in the system of care, you might completely miss out on the divine cure. And that's the question we're left with. After exploring this incredible vision of a flourishing life empowered by the Spirit of grace, it really all boils down to this one personal point of application. Where is your trust really placed? In the care or in the cure?